Okay, so we already went off for quite a while.
That's
Haven't
cool.
gotten into the questions, but I think that was great.
I was wondering if this was just a
Just a
to
formality to
sidetrack
get
me,
you over here. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think these are pretty easy ones, but I think this is stuff that a lot of people wish they had the opportunity to do, and sometimes they just don't get that opportunity. So the first one for me is, what advice would you give to a newer member just starting their career? I think we've already touched on some of these, but if you have anything extra.
Yeah. Be careful who you associate yourself with, because you are who you associate yourself with. If you're going to associate yourself with that jackwagon, you're going to become a jackwagon. You associate those that are dedicated, you're going to become dedicated. You know. Be careful the reputation that you're trying to establish for yourself, because you may not like the reputation you end up establishing for yourself. You may think you're doing the right thing and whatever, but the reputation that you're going to establish for yourself may close doors for you that you would want to have opened. Go to fire conferences, man. Don't waste time. Work on your probation, work on all your skill set and stuff, and as soon as you're off probation, go to fire conferences. Learn from instructors outside of your fire department. Learn from go to the bigger fire conferences and learn from instructors that are well respected. They'll give you their phone number. Mm-hmm. You can call them and go, hey, remember that technique you showed me with the dull side of the axe, the flat side of the axe when you swing it and this and that and all this, and they'll walk you through the paces on what to do and how to utilize that. And the reason for that is not so that you can come home and look superior to everybody else. The reason is so that you can come home to your department and show your captain, your lieutenant, whoever the station officer is, hey, I learned this new technique at this fire conference. Do you guys want to train on it? And you bring that back and you share it. Mm-hmm. And that's how we change the training techniques and how we open ourselves up wider. And maybe next year when you go back, you take 3 or 4 other people with you, That develops a bond that cements things. That's brotherhood. That will create the oxytocin, which is the hormones that the body releases that create it's the bonding hormone.
Yeah.
So that's what I got on that.
Okay, so same question. What advice would you give now to a newer lieutenant? So let's say they've done everything right. They've gone to the conferences. They've developed a great reputation. Now they're ready to take on that leadership role. So lieutenant or cap, however you guys do it.
So yeah, the next promotional up. So, this is the one where they say there's a class. It's called From Buddy to Boss, and there is a transition there, but doesn't mean you got to be an asshole. You could take all the leadership classes that you want. It's the equivalent of watching YouTube videos and thinking you got it, It's not a one-off. It's not a one and done. Being in a leadership position, what I talked about before, is about developing your character. So if we're sitting down and I'm counseling you, I'm not berating you. I'm trying to understand what's going on. You're one of my boys, I want you to be successful. How can I help you, I noticed every day you show up, you smell like alcohol, bro. What's going on, man? Everything okay at home? Are you all right? Because if this continues to go on, you're going to leave me in a very uncomfortable position that I'm going to have to push this up the chain. I don't want to do that. I want to help you. And I know how embarrassing these kind of things can be. It's trying to put yourself, that's the type of training that you don't see a lot of. And that's the type of training that you're going to need as a lieutenant. Can we teach a monkey how to fight fire? That's not a problem, okay?
Yeah.
But to lead men, I've run across people that can't lead a dog on a leash, let alone lead men. They have no business. You know what they did? They did really, really well on the written test. And so we gave them a badge and said, you're a leader now. That's not true. That's not true. To lead men, it takes, you have to have the moral compass, you have to have the values, you have to have the character to support that. And if you don't, you better develop it quickly, because that's the position you're in. It's a leadership position. Very difficult. It's a hard battle, That's an internal job versus the external where we go places and we do things. Developing character is an internal job.
Yeah.
Very hard. We don't train our people like that. That's why it's kind of seems to elude, some people.
That's a really good point. Just hearing that internal job, for me, when I took on the promotion, I felt the internal responsibility increase hundredfold, right?
Yep.
And for me, I couldn't feel like I was faking it. Like I couldn't show up to my job squared away when deep down inside I wasn't squared away in my life.
That's right.
And yeah, I want to feel comfortable when I walk through the doors. I'm like, yeah, my life isn't perfect, but I am striving in every aspect of my life towards that.
Yep.
And that way, when I walk through these doors, I'm not trying to put on a different mask or a different suit that I'm showing these guys or showing the Chiefs. I'm like, oh, look at me, I'm squared away. Like, no, this is just me. But in order to do that, it was like, well, then you have all this work to do. And that's it. Like the judge immediately comes with the ideal, right? It's
Amen.
like, you want to do
That's
this?
right.
Well, then you better start doing this.
That's right.
And I almost feel like with some people that I've talked to in conferences and stuff, they are very willing to almost let their moral code slide when they're off duty and go and do all the things, right? Be the adulterer, be the drinker, be the one that blows off responsibilities. But then when they come to work, they're this completely different person that would never do that.
Yeah, that's called a hypocrite.
Yes. And eventually, I feel like that dichotomy catches up to them and becomes this really weird
Should have pissed a
internal.
few of yous off. Guess what? I don't give a fuck.
I think that creates internal turmoil after a while. And you see guys that are just very angry and bitter in life.
The
And
conflict, bro.
It's the conflict.
It
Yes,
eats you up.
there it
man.
is.
It
Yep.
eats you up.
So I think that's great advice for a new lieutenant is the character
Yes.
first. Doesn't matter SOG's policy, you'll learn that stuff.
So I was really uncomfortable when I would float out to another station, someplace where I may have known guys, but I didn't know them like I know the dynamics of my own station, right? And so they want us to float out and go to other places. So I would call the senior guy in. But sometimes the senior guy was a slug. But I'd call him in anyways and say, hey, listen, I don't know anybody here. What's the routine like? Fill me in on what's going on. I have some ideas. I got some training that I'd like to do, but I know that I'm just floating in here and I don't want to come off as, a tyrant. I want to bring the training in, but I want to do it in a particular fashion. And most of the time that helped. And then what happened is I got to the point where I would call for a morning meeting. And I'd sit at the meeting and I'd go, okay, listen, this is what I would like to do. What does your routine typically look like? And so I would take their input and listen to them. And, that's where the joking usually starts and all that. And I just take it on the chin, because it's no big deal. The humor is a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
And firemen are going to test you. I was one of the guys. I was the biggest culprit. I would test you to see what you were really like. If you were okay, I work with you. If you were easy to get under your skin, bro, it was game on, And I was very cognizant of that. And I took a lot of things into consideration. And eventually when I would float in, guys would see me and they'd go, oh, dude, I can't believe it's you. This is going to be a great shift. I love it. What do you got planned for us today?
Mm-hmm.
And we would do things because I try to make it fun, not punitive,
Yeah.
Yeah, these guys have a drive. They have a passion. There's a reason that they're here. And sometimes as you get to move on in your career and you've dealt with a department and you can get jaded. You can get disgruntled, And I don't want to alienate you any further. I actually want to bring you into the fold. I want to alleviate some of that. I know what that feels like,
Yeah.
Our suicide rate's too high to ignore stuff like that.
Yes.
You can't. That position is such an important position because you get the opportunity to intervene at a personal level and at a professional level.
Mm-hmm.
And that's important. And not only that, you can't talk shit. You got to walk the talk, bro.
Yep.
So it's actually works to the advantage of whoever that officer is. That pressure, that was your internal integrity telling you, don't fuck up,
Yeah.
because there's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of responsibility with that. I don't care if it's a slow station. I don't care what state it's in. I don't care what sex, religion, color, size, shape you are. there's responsibility that comes with that across the board, period.
Okay, so this is one that I think I'm asking because and I think we all do this, right? Like I'm personally struggling with this, and so part of me overcoming this struggle is to try and, like you did, try and unwrap and unwind the problem. So everyone loves to talk about culture, building and protecting the culture of your department. How do you define culture, and do you feel it is such an important piece to a successful department?
Okay, so culture is essentially it's the attitudes and the behaviors that are predominant that establish the culture. You know, so you could be in a toxic environment and recognize it for what it is, and either from peer pressure or not knowing any better fall into that, or recognize it and say, yeah, I'm out, I'm not going to do that. Changing a culture is extremely difficult because what you're changing essentially when people, you know, when it's predominantly when it's attitudes and behaviors, you're sort of changing an ideology. And so number one, if you can't show like, yeah, I mean, you could approach it by saying, well, look, this is what's wrong. I just choose to go, yeah, I get it, bro. I said, but I'm going to do this, and don't judge me. I won't judge you, okay? And I go along my merry way. And eventually, something gives one way or the other. You know, all it takes is one person to come over, and once they start to see that change, it's all good, you know? So let's say, allegedly, that there was a fireman that you work with who's cheating on his spouse. Fictitious character.
Yeah, allegedly.
Yeah. And he's got 2 phones, right? One he uses for his family, and the other one for extracurricular activities. And let's say that phone for his family is broken so he can't see the screen. And let's say that he just finished speaking with his spouse and he thought he hung up, but he didn't. And he picked up the other phone and spoke to his hoochie mama, right? So when that hits the fan, the first thing that's asked is, can you help me with this? And I was like, allegedly, my response would be, well, we've talked about this case of dumpster dick that you've got, and you didn't want to do anything. Now you want me to lie about it. Well, it's already bad enough because a woman's going to come in here and she's going to think I'm a part of this.
Yep.
So you've already tarnished me, bro. Am I going to help you with this? I can't help you with this. There's nothing I can do to help you with this. Even if I lied, she knows it's not true.
We had this older firefighter that remained a firefighter. He was able to drive, able to be a company officer, but he never promoted, never tested for those. And he was probably the most respected guy in the department. And it was because his love for the job, and then also the culture that he brought. So he had this famous saying that like still sticks with me, and I think he's been retired 8 years now or something like that. And he would say, I will die for you, but I'll never lie for you. And he lived it. I mean, if you even tried to get him caught up in
What's his
sort
name?
of Gary Caldwell. Yeah,
Bears repeating.
Amazing firefighter.
Bears repeating.
And he would say it and get choked up as he was saying it,
Yeah.
because it was his code. It was part of his character. And even in his retirement, he mentioned that. And he was like, the friendships that I have is because of this. Because I would hold people accountable, and I would hold myself accountable to that. And so I think, like, be a man among men when it comes to that. And
You know how many black hats I know that are leaders? That's what we call a black hat.
Yeah.
A
Yep.
guy that stays in the firefighting rank.
Mhm.
You know, he's got a love for what he does, but not only that, he's the unofficial leader.
Yep.
He may not be promoted, but if that guy tells you to do something, you're going to do it
Yeah.
because you respect him. You can't teach that, bro.
No.
It's something you do. You know, it's like love. It's not something you show. It's something you do. You know.
Yep.
That's cool. That's a
Yeah.
cool story. I like that. Nice job, Gary.